Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome you and thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I'm Tammy Pearson, your Vice President. We have a very busy afternoon planned with these important speakers here, so we are going to get started. First of all, I wanted to let you all know that I have all the completed evaluation forms here for those homes that have been completed so far. And for those of you who have ordered the address signs, I have them here as well. There are still some new members' homes that are pending evaluations, which Tyler hopes to get started again on the 1st of May and have them completed by the end of May. Those evaluation forms will be held by me and arrangements can be made to get them distributed to you when they are completed. We are going to be doing another sign order, so anyone interested in purchasing a Firewise address sign to be placed at the top of your driveway entrance, there is a sign-up sheet on the front table. We will place that order later in the spring. Also on the front table, there are the homeowners worksheets to be completed by you. These are to include all work hours and money spent fire safing your homes. In regards to filling out the homeowners worksheets, I misspoke to some of you at the meeting. When you're filling out your forms for the work that you've done fire safing your home, it should be the work you have done in this current year, not in years past, as I might have insinuated. It's information used to justify a recertification for the next year. If anyone has questions or requests for us, please contact me and I can get you an answer if I don't have it and answer what I can. Karen is busy, and it helps to keep her doing what she needs to be doing without distractions. We are encouraging all our members to like and follow our Facebook page. It's found on Facebook, East Hayden Lake Firewise Community. Please share it with all of your friends, and we will be using this page as well as emailing you with valuable updates and information when it's needed. It's an important tool when we need to get information out to our members quickly. Now, here's your Firewise President, Karen Hayes.
Thanks, Tammy. Back in 2021, about 2 or 3 months before we got certified as a Firewise community, we had a meeting here in this building, and Fire Marshal Tyler Drexel stood here and told us that the federal government had decided to add our area to its list of wildfire hotspots, which of course was always on my bucket list. I always wanted to live in a wildfire hotspot, but actually it was good news. It meant that our wildfire predicament wasn't just our problem. It meant that the federal government considered it its problem as well, and it wanted to help us. And thanks to being on that hotspot list, we are better placed to receive federal funding now to help us with the most expensive parts of becoming Firewise. Why would the federal government want to give us money to help us protect ourselves against wildfire? Well, do you remember the Ridge Creek fire? Yeah, that fire was located right about here on the map off to the east, about 5 miles as the crow flies from the edge of our community. If you need some perspective about not only where the Ridge Creek fire was, but also whether it was truly threatening, take a look at this map that shows the fire's footprint. The little blue mark with my name under it is my house. The light brown cleared area above it is our hayfield and the northern members who were part of the initial 17 households. 3 months after we got our certification, we got $250,000, thanks to Andrea Littlefield at Office of Emergency Management, who's here to speak with us today. Andrea is the overseer of grant applications for various agencies here in Kootenai County. The money we received also was thanks to Tyra Holfelds of Idaho Department of Lands, who is the liaison between the federal Firewise program and the entire state of Idaho. And of course, Tyler Drexel, the spark that lit us on fire to form this Firewise community in the first place. Now that money never touched our fingers. Tyra Holfelds funneled it to the Firewise forester assigned to our community. That's Steve Bladel, who also will be presenting today. Now, the home evaluations many of you are having or have had this spring are focused on your house and your yard, which is 200, Tyler? 100. 100 feet out from your house, all the way around. Most of us in this community have enough land that it extends beyond our yard. That's what Steve focuses on, our private wildlands. It's usually not as meticulously groomed as our yard, not mowed as often, if at all, might be too steep to mow, too rocky, too rutted, littered with fallen trees and branches, overgrown by wild shrubs and brambles, thick with pine needles, leaves, and twigs. Whether yours is only slightly wild or so wild it's tough to walk through, it's likely to harbor hazardous fuels either way. And those fuels could feed a fire, and what fuel does to an approaching wildfire is make it hotter, broader, higher, faster spreading, and more lethal. I'll let Steve explain how he does what he does, but in my experience, the end result is dramatically safer, yet still natural looking, and really quite beautiful. There's a perfect example in the Henry Point area between mile markers 14 and 13 on the lakeside of East Hayden Lake Road. You might have noticed it. Now here's the thing. The federal government rightly wants the biggest bang for each buck we receive, the most benefit for the community as a whole. And that means Steve isn't meant to treat one property at a time, one parcel here, one way over there, etc. That helps the individual landowner, and that's good, but it doesn't do much for the community as a whole. Instead, the feds want groups of contiguous properties done all at the same time, so entire neighborhoods benefit, and the adjacent neighborhoods benefit too from being next to such a cohesive and beautiful firebreak. And as our community has grown, from 17 households in 2021 to over 200 today, and still more to go, this map that we remake every few months so we can see that growth and see where we need to focus more energy spreading the word and getting everybody on board, this map has finally revealed natural groupings caused by concentrations of members physically separated by the lay of the land. The white lines around those groupings practically drew themselves. This has made us, I believe, even more favored to receive funding, hopefully sooner rather than later. Both Tyler Drexel and Tyre Holfeldt have told me we have many of the elements needed to compete well. We have ongoing growth, we have momentum, we have the groupings, and we're shovel ready. The only thing we need to add is to get the remaining blank spots to be filled in by membership. So here's the bottom line for me. For the past 2.5 years, Tammy and I have been using old-fashioned outreach to grow this community. We've knocked on doors, we've sent emails, we've texted, we've made phone calls, but many homeowners out here don't live here full-time, and the only contact information we've had for some of them is what's on the county website, which is their postal address, and it's usually someplace other than Hayden Lake, Idaho. Last fall, we sent out 600 letters to those addresses that we got off the county website. We paid for the printer paper, the printer ink, the envelopes, the stamps. The stamps alone cost $400, and we got about 50 new members, which is wonderful. But the vast majority of those letters went unanswered. It could be they moved and the change of address hasn't been recorded at the county. It could be they didn't recognize the return address, so the letter got trashed. Whatever the reason, clearly our traditional outreach has pretty much reached its natural end. Now we need you to help, to talk with your neighbors. See, I live in the McLeans Bay, Skinner Bay area. Tammy lives in the Chicken Point Peninsula. And look at what she's accomplished there by knocking on doors. That's almost completely filled in. Those of you in the Lees neighborhood, in the Sunset Beach area, the O'Rourke area, and in the Windy Clark area, you might not know your neighbors well, but you know them better than we do. You know what their car looks like. They know what you look like. You have a pretty good idea when they're in town. You can knock on their door and expect them to open it. And then to back up your approach, or if you're shy like me, you can hang your East of Hayden Lake Firewise sign at the top of your driveway. Reflective house number signs like these are recommended by the Firewise program because your numbers are highly visible in low visibility conditions, and they mark the exact place first responders should turn to get to your house. That's a big deal in this part of the country. Responders know the roads, even the private roads, but it's asking a lot for them to know your driveway. And if they pull into the wrong driveway, in these areas it could waste precious minutes finding a way to turn those big rigs around or back them out. These are street quality metal signs, and the numbers are 3M diamond grade reflective material, and they're classy, understated, not gaudy or cute. Plus they advertise that your household is a member of the East of Hayden Lake Firewise community. It's our belief that when non-members see these signs popping up all over the community, it starts looking more like something worth joining. And you can tell them there's no downside. We don't collect dues. We just help them help themselves. And if they help you fill in your neighborhood, it could move the whole neighborhood, including you, up in that hierarchy for funding to pay for the really expensive part of becoming Firewise. Next up, Fire Marshal Tyler Drexel.
These are all things that can happen. So by us doing these inspections for you, these recommendations, I'm going to emphasize recommendations. I'm not mandating that anybody do this. These are recommendations that we make. If you follow this inspection form, if you follow these recommendations, these are ways that you can protect your home, not only when you're there, but also when you're not there. Somebody stay at their house 24/7, 365, especially during wildland season. Anybody here that's a lock-in that just stays there all the time? I didn't think so. You leave and go to work. You leave and go on vacation. You leave and go to the grocery store and there's a wildland fire. A wildland fire 5.5 miles couldn't cause a fire breath. If you follow these recommendations, you're going to greatly reduce that risk potential of one of those brands landing on your property and starting a secondary or tertiary fire or a primary fire that's already burned. Okay? This is super simple stuff, people. We look at your roof. We determine, do you have a metal, tile, or composition shingle roof? All great things to protect against wildfire. Anybody got a wood shake roof on their house? No one?
We have on our siding.
On your siding? Got wood shake siding? And we'll talk about siding here in just a second. I actually inspected a house not too long ago that had a wood shake roof. Okay? I'm not telling that person, hey, go get rid of your wood shake roof. But when it's time to get rid of your wood shake roof, go with something like metal, tile, or composition shingle. Way more fire resistant than wood shake is. Now there are ways that you can make wood shakes fire resistant, but this cabin looked like it was probably in the 70-year-old range with 70-year-old wood shake, extremely dry, a ton of pine needles interweaved in between the shakes themselves. You guys think that's a fire resistant roof? Not a chance. And it also wasn't very steep, so a firebrand landing on that roof, there's a pretty good chance that firebrand's going to start something on fire. Then we're going to jump into the siding. Metal, brick, stone, stucco, or hardy plank. Who's got hardy plank and knows what hardy plank is? Cement siding. The stuff is phenomenal. Top rated against fire, and they actually make it now to look just like wood shake. Stuff's absolutely awesome. It's number one that we recommend. If it's time to change out your siding, look at putting hardy plank on. Plus, the cool thing about hardy plank, for those of us that have wood siding on our houses that you have to paint like every 7 or 8 years, hardy will actually hold paint if you do a good coat of paint 20 plus years before you have to repaint it. The stuff is absolutely amazing. But we're going to recommend that you do that. You got treated log, you got vinyl or painted wood. How many people have vinyl on their house? Vinyl is semi-fire resistant when it's new. What happens to vinyl as it gets old? It dries out, it becomes brittle, and it's real easy for something next to it on fire to catch the building on fire. Can't tell you how many, hey Forrest, how many fires will respond to a year with barbecues too close to vinyl siding? It happens, doesn't it? It happens. Vinyl siding is not fire resistant once it gets old. It only takes 5 years of vinyl siding to get old. There again, not trying to scare you, just trying to educate you. Windows, double pane versus single pane. What does that make a difference when it comes to wildland fire?
A lot.
A ton. Two things, radiant heat energy. I've actually got videos of fires burning outside of houses, radiating that heat energy, intensifying it, and catching curtains and furnishing on fire behind double pane windows, or behind single pane windows. Double pane windows, you got that outer layer that's reflecting that heat, you got a cooling layer in between, and you got that secondary pane. Plus, if that outer pane cracks, you've got another pane there that's going to protect you. So it's huge to have double pane windows. So if you're at that stage of the game where it's time to replace your windows, instead of going out and buying cheap aluminum windows, every manufacturer now of vinyl windows, they're going to be double paned. That's what we recommend that you install. Porches, decks, and patios. Wood decks. Is there a problem with wood decks? What do you guys think?
No, not at all, I've heard.
Wood decks, you can actually do a lot to protect your home with a wood deck, as long as you keep a heavy layer of stain or paint on it. They also make instrumental coatings. They're a fire-resistant paint coating that you can put on site on there if you don't want to replace them. There again, a wood deck though will hold a flame, it will hold a fire, will sit there and burn through and catch that deck on fire. How about like hardy or what do they call it? Trex decking, thank you. Is Trex decking fire resistant? What do you guys think?
I think so.
It is. Yep. Now, if Trex gets going, it will burn, but it's really hard to get it going. They actually make it fire resistant from the factory, where they've actually done numerous tests where they take firebrands, set them right on top of that track's decking, and it will not catch after the firebrand will burn out before it catches that track on fire. It'll melt, but it does not sustain free burning, and that's what we want to see from the fire world, or concrete. Okay. Now there's a problem. You can have the best deck in the world, you can have a nice concrete patio, but you leave to go on vacation during wildland season, you leave your couch cushions on your nice decorative furniture out there, and that firebrand lands on there. The BTUs that come off of that really nice plastic Adirondack chair that you have is intense. It's like solid gasoline. So we tell people, hey, you're leaving? Guess what you do with your patio furniture? Put it inside the house. Firewood, who has firewood stacked right up next to their home? Come on, don't be shy, raise your hand. I know there's a few people that do it here. Is there a problem with firewood stacked next to your home in the middle of winter? In the middle of winter? No. Once wildland season rolls around, we recommend that you move that firewood away from the structure itself. Okay? Bring it back come winter time when you want to have those nice fires in the house. Get it out of there during the summertime. Okay? How about cleaning your rain gutters? We all clean our rain gutters on a regular basis at least twice a year.
Yes.
Come on, who doesn't do it? There's got to be somebody in here that doesn't clean their rain gutters at least twice a year. There we go. We got to take her back there. You don't have any. Oh, look at that. Outsmarted me. I'm going to tell you, I'm not always great at it myself. I try to do it, but it's an absolute pain in the butt. But cleaning your rain gutters, that firebrand we talk about, it hits your roof, it rolls down and stops inside your rain gutter, and your rain gutter's full of dried out pine needles. What's behind the rain gutter? Fascia. What's fascia 99% of the time made out of? Wood. So now you got these pine needles burning in your rain gutter, going out both directions, affecting that dry wood that's behind there. Because guess what? It's really hard to paint fascia and get a nice coat of paint on there when you got a rain gutter up against it. People just don't do it. Cleaning out your rain gutters, it's going to protect it. These are all things, folks, that we're going to look at when we come and do your walk around. We're going to break your house down into 4 separate sides. Okay? In the fire world, we use Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. A, your address side. B, we go around clockwise. B, C, D. So you'll notice when you get your paperwork, on the paperwork you've got an A, B, C, and D. Okay? I want you guys to know what you're seeing, because for most of you, you weren't at the property when we did the walk around. There were a few of you nice folks that I met when we did the walk around. But I want you to know what you're looking at. So Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. A, address side. Okay, that's the primary side of the home. That's usually facing the road, the address side, where the main door is going to be. Within that, we break your home into 3 separate zones. From the side of your house, out 3 to 4 feet. From that 3 to 4 foot mark, out to the 30-foot mark, and from 30 out to 100. Okay? Karen was talking about how we break it down. Steve likes the bigger picture. We look at your house. How fast can your house run? I'm serious. How fast can your house run? Anybody live in a motorhome? Your house can't run, folks. So you need to protect it. That's your primary investment. Just heard yesterday, and I'm going to say something that I really don't want to tell anybody, but we just found out that Hayden Lake, and Rathdrum were just dubbed by the Insurance Institute as fire-prone communities. I asked the question, I said, well, why'd you dub them fire-prone communities? And they said, well, because we had a fire called Ridge Creek last year. And I said, well, how many structures were lost in the Ridge Creek fire? And they said, well, I don't know, but it had to affect, it affected a bunch of stuff. I said, there wasn't a single structure lost in the Ridge Creek fire. Yet you've now dubbed us a fire-prone community. How many heard 2 weeks ago that pretty much the entire state of California was dubbed a fire-prone state?
Yeah, they dumped everybody.
Yeah, and so insurance companies just came in and said, sorry, not going to insure you, sorry, not going to insure you. Now, the difference between us and California, and this is what I was told by these professionals, is that we're only a fire-prone community for 5 months out of the year. So there's 7 months that we're not. So they're not planning on dumping everybody. But unfortunately, what that scares me is, are we going to see an increase to our insurance premiums? Because they just take and take and take. Any insurance agents in the room? I don't want to offend anybody. Any insurance agents? What do insurance companies want to do? They want to take your money, they want to hold on to it, they never want to pay you for a claim, right? That's their goal. That's how they make money. That's where their profit comes from. So what I see happen is the insurance companies want to take more money to keep people, to make sure people have insurance. If you have a home loan, you got to have insurance. If you own your house, hey, it's up to you at that stage of the game. But by doing these inspections and walking around and looking at these zones that we identify are what's going to help protect you, and hopefully you end up not having a fire incident that occurs in your home. So within that 4-foot zone, we're looking for non-flammable fuel breaks. Who loves to put bark around the side of their house? Great mulch, right? Bark is horrible. It's horrible. A firebrand we're talking about, lands inside that bark's dry, it's gonna sit there and smolder, it's gonna start free burning. If it's up against your siding, we're off to the races. If you replace that bark with rock, now that firebrand lands there, it's not going to be able to communicate or transfer that fire to the siding of the house. Plus, the cool thing about rock, and I did this myself, I took all the bark out and put rock around my house. You can take a leaf blower and you can blow all those leaves off and all the bark doesn't land in your grass. So it also becomes easier maintenance for you as a property owner. Lay down some nice landscape fabric, cover a nice decorative landscape rock, you just protect your home against wildfire and you make your cleanup and maintenance much easier. Okay? So we're looking at that 4-foot zone now. We're looking at non-hazardous fuel breaks. We're looking at rock is better than bark. They make this really cool new plasticky rubber stuff. It's a reconstituted, but it's actually considered to be fire resistant. If you like the look of bark, you can actually buy that stuff. The problem is it only lasts about 5 years. You got to dump it all out of there and replace it because it loses its fire resistance within 5 years. So rock is our friend. Rock is good. When it comes to vegetation, we're looking for deciduous, not coniferous. What's that mean? He's a forester. Help me out here.
Deciduous loses its leaves.
Okay. And coniferous is?
Holds on to the leaves, generally speaking.
Okay. So what is a leaf-bearing tree going to be?
A leaf-bearing tree.
Is that deciduous or coniferous? Trying to get everybody educated here. Help me out. A maple, a Japanese maple planted in there, is that a hazardous tree because it's coniferous or deciduous?
That's a deciduous tree.
Okay. And is it good to have or bad to have?
That if you irrigate it, that'd be great.
Perfect. Okay. So what that means, who's junipers around the house? Anybody have junipers? You got junipers?
I'm not telling you to get rid of it.
Junipers are horrible, people. They are like solid gasoline. They lose all their needles down on the inside. It gets brown, it gets thick, and we can't penetrate it with a fire hose to put the fire out. If you've got them next to your home, we recommend that you move them out. Bring in something that's leaf bearing, something that's not going to burn, something that doesn't drop its needles throughout the season. Dropping leaves is easy, dropping needles is bad. When do the leaves drop off trees? After the wildlife season's over with. When do needles drop? Year round. Okay? So take that 4-foot zone. Non-flammable fuel break, all leaf and litter cast is removed. We don't even want any grasses in there. Then we jump into the next zone. So when you're looking at this, our next zone is our 30-foot zone. Get rid of ladder fuels. Who knows what a ladder fuel is? Think about a ladder. We've got a couple over here in the corner. Ladder fuel is fuel that grows from the ground vegetation to the bottom of the canopy of the trees. It's a way for fire to communicate. Remember how I said we don't want fire getting into the treetops? It's really hard to put out. We can keep a fire on the ground by eliminating those ladder fuels. Then that helps keep the fire out of the treetops. So go in there and trim anything so you don't have any vegetation that goes from the ground to the bottom of your canopy. We recommend 10 to 15 foot above the ground is where you trim those trees to. Okay, get rid of that. The grasses in that area should be kept green or should be kept short. So if you can't keep it green, keep it short. Okay, that's ideal for us because we want to see that fire stay on the ground. We go out and Forrest, how many fires you've been to in 3-foot, 4-foot tall grasses with 9-foot flame lengths over the years?
A few.
Yeah. Quite a few. You get 3-foot tall grasses that are growing up around your home, they can actually produce flame lengths that are 9 feet above the ground. Okay? And then you get a wind-driven event behind it, so keep that grass green or keep it short. Then we get out of that 30 to 100 foot zone. What it does is it just broadens out a little bit more. So in other words, you can put your trees a little closer together. You can have a few more bushes. It's not quite as bad if you had a little dry grass out there, but still keep it short. Okay? I know I kind of went on. A lot of information there. But I just kind of wanted you guys to know the gist of what this document is, especially since we didn't get a chance to walk around with some of you and be able to show you what it was that we were looking at. All of our phone numbers are on the bottom. Once you get your sheet, anybody that did your inspection, be sure to call them if you have any questions. They can walk you through that inspection form. For anybody that we haven't done their inspections, we are going to get to you, I promise. Unfortunately, we're extremely busy right now. There's a ton going on in the fire district. We're obviously getting into our busy season. But please, we will be there. If you guys are present to be able to walk with us, we would sure love to walk your property with you. If you've already had your inspection and you want us to come back out and walk your property with you, we're happy to do that also. Because for me, you get a whole lot more out of it if I can walk the property with you and show you exactly what it is that I'm looking at. Do you guys have questions for me?
Cumberland pines are beautiful trees, but they're just fanatic in terms of needles everywhere. and I have hillsides of needles and all that. Is there anything, I mean, it's impossible to rake it. It would take me the rest of my life to rake it. Is there anything we can do to, I got the trees limbed up real high. Is there anything else that can be done with those, or?
Not really. I mean, Andrew may have more answers when he comes up here. He's a forester. He's the guy I go to when I got tree questions. But not really a whole lot other than cut it down. I mean, the problem with that needle cast on the ground is we actually get where fires will creep through the duff. They'll creep through. I mean, I'll see areas where we've got 5, 7, 8 years worth of needle cast laying on the ground, and a fire will actually start and burn, and it'll burn underneath that needle cast and rear its ugly head 100 feet from the primary fire. So just clearing that away from the home, clearing that away from structures is probably going to be most important. But it's just constant maintenance nightmare is what it comes down to. But if you remove those ladder fuels to where if you do get those pine needles on fire, they don't have that method or that way to be able to communicate to the canopy of the trees. They can't climb that ladder up into the trees. That's huge right there, because now you can do a lot with a 3/4 inch green garden hose to be able to put that fire out. One other thing I did want to touch on real quick, gated roads. Anybody live behind a gated road? Got gates on your property to keep the bad guys out? If you do, I highly recommend that you look at getting a Knox box or a Knox padlock for your property. That's an emergency padlock that only our firefighters have keys to. That gives us the ability when you're not home to be able to get onto your property and be able to extinguish a fire without having to break a gate or break a fence down. We have a lot of powered gates in our community. They're very expensive when we have to push one over because we don't have the Knox access to get through it. So if you have any questions associated with that, please feel free to call me. I can walk you through the process of getting Knox. But it helps us out a ton to be able to quickly get to your property and protect it. So, and also for medical. You're in your home, the gate's locked, we show up for a medical call. That saves us a ton of time by being able to open up that gate. Question here in the back.
So we live on what's called an abandoned road, and the Lakes Highway doesn't maintain our road,
Mm-hmm.
so we maintain our road. But will you come on our road, even because
We will come on any road that we can get down. Okay, so winter time is a little more challenging, obviously. I'm going to code geek for just a second because that's one of the other hats I wear. Is I'm a code geek as the fire marshal. I do all the code enforcement. A road by law is supposed to be maintained for year-round drivability, and actually that even means when you're not at the property. So if you have a seasonal cabin and nobody's maintaining that road, if we can't get our fire trucks to that road, we're going to have a real tough time putting the fire out. And we have had it around the lake numerous times over the years where we could not get properties. We're not just going to say, they didn't plow, we're going to leave. We're going to do everything in our power, but I will tell you it's going to be a very time consuming. Had a fire a couple of years ago, I won't mention where. People had been gone on vacation for a couple of weeks. First arriving crew showed up on scene. He was able to get his truck up there. It was about 2.5 feet of snow on their driveway. He was able to get his truck up there. The next fire truck showed up and made it all the way up to the house. The next fire truck, now the snow's packed down, what happens when the snow packs down? It gets icy. Next fire truck goes up. They were from the city of Coeur d'Alene. They're not as good at driving in the world. But they get up there around the first corner, back into the truck, kicks out, they slide off the road and block off the whole road. So we've got a roughly 5,000 square foot home, fully involved with fire, 750 gallons of water, and 3 firefighters stand up there trying to put it out. So maintaining your roads is huge. During the summer months, our trucks that we bring back here, we bring water tenders, we bring brush trucks, we bring full-size fire trucks to do fire suppression. If your driveway, your roadway is 12 foot wide, we're coming down it. If it's 8 foot wide, we're coming down it. If it's 6 foot wide, sorry, our bets are off. We're going to hike in there and try to put the fire out. These guys don't stop. I mean, I make fun of Forrest because of being around for a few years. Forrest is one of the hardest working firefighters I've ever met. The guy does not give up. He doesn't.
he's my neighbor, so
Yeah.
I'll call him.
Oh, is he? Perfect, yeah. Actually, call 911. Don't call Forrest. He's a hard-working guy, but there's only so much that he can do, I'm telling you. No, we will do everything in our power to get to your property. We will do everything in our power to make your life better. But you've got to remember, folks, our history, 7 years ago, we were running an average of 2,500 calls a year. Now we're running over 7,000 calls a year. Okay? We're doing that now out of 3 fire stations, where 7 years ago we were doing out of 2 fire stations. We've only added 16 more firefighters to our department in that time period, but we're running that many more calls. So it's challenging, but we're gonna do everything in our power to get there.
We live on the little finger of the lake right where Sportsman's Park is.
Okay?
Right across from us is Shenandoah.
Mhm.
And a lot of those homes are rentals. Like
Yes, they are.
there are no people there during the winter
Yep.
at all. So last year when we had the complete fire ban, the renter people come, they don't know that. So I'm wondering, like, you know, those signs that you put on the side of the road, if one of those, the next time that there's a complete, absolutely no fire, how are they supposed to know that if they're just renters coming in for the weekend or a week?
Sure. So VRBOs are kind of the bane of my existence, to be honest with you. As a matter of fact, we have a ton of calls at VRBOs throughout the summer months. And I'm talking everything from, you know, drunken medical calls to here, hold my beer while I light this firework calls, to people burning in something that they shouldn't be burning. And it really, really is tough for us. Unfortunately, there's budgetary constraints that come with that. Putting up the signs is great. We've actually tried to get grants for the last couple of years to do, to be able to put signs at
I
the
know you
entrances.
have them, because I see them for the races or the marathons or whatever, so.
Well, we don't have them. Those are the highway districts that have them to warn people.
Okay.
Yeah, so when it comes to a complete fire ban, that's something where we try to get grants to be able to grab those signs and be able to put them out. Because our goal, and actually this is one thing just recently I added to what's our county wildfire protection plan, is to be able to get some money so we can actually put together a trailer where we can have certain things to be able to do some additional protections. And one of those things is actually have signs that we can put at Twin Lakes, we can put at both sides of Hayden Lake, in those areas that are more prone to people. I like to call them the transient population. They're unfamiliar with our rules, they're unfamiliar with our laws, they're unfamiliar with our topography, and they're unfamiliar with our weather. And I will tell you, you look at Shenandoah as an example. There's an individual that lives out there that actually lost their house in the Paradise Fire. And I've talked to him numerous times, and he broke down because he saw things that he never wants to see again. But he is super concerned because not only do they do those things, but they also park on both sides of the roads where we can't even get our fire
Right,
trucks
it's
down.
already just a one-lane road.
Exactly, and now you get people parking because it's party weekend. That makes life really challenging for
Right,
us.
and it's the same when like the lake was closed, because you have the aircraft coming in,
Yep.
and idiots are out there on jet skis. It's
Yeah.
like, but if you don't know that the lake is closed.
Right. We try our darndest to get the education out there to people. But we need common sense, so we have a tough time fixing it.
I think you did a great job of getting the word out last summer, by the way.
Yes, you
You know, once it got started, I mean, every time I turned around, there was something on the TV or the radio or wherever. And I want to commend you guys for the job you guys, everybody did during that fire last summer. I mean, I think you guys did a great job.
I will tell you, probably one of the best things, share with your neighbors, share with the owners of those homes if you know those owners of those homes. Check out our Facebook page. Anytime we have a change to the weather conditions, anytime we have a change to the fire conditions, we're going to put that on our Facebook page. We're going to put it on our signs. I actually want to, and this is something for some of my friends that I have at the Department of Lands, is the ability to go ahead and get a permanent sign that we can actually show the fire danger. And they've purchased some for us in the past, but I'd like to actually put those to some of the entrances to more of our, guys, if we got a fire on the south side of the lake, you guys got one way to get out unless you're on a boat. And so we want to keep that kind of stuff from happening. The best way to do that is through education, and then you guys taking how we educate you, and you guys educate your neighbors, and hopefully that word of mouth will help improve things.
Yeah, can you tell me your thoughts on when we have to cut down trees on our property about running everything through a wood chipper versus having a slash pile and burning it in the winter months?
You bet. Either way is a good way to go, and fully allowed. Now, chipping, if it's done correctly, and I think there's probably people that know more about chipping than I do, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about chipping. But if you get that mulch layer, what they call a mastication layer, you get that layer perfect in there, you get the right thickness in there, it can actually improve the health of your property. If it's too thick, it becomes a problem because now you're holding moisture, increasing bug population, different things. You get it too thin, it can dry out and actually become fuel for the fire. So there's an ideal thickness that should be that really makes it better. The nice thing too, obviously, people are aware that sometimes around Hayden Lake, smoke tends to build up, and Hayden kind of has its own little system where the smoke tends to hover. But burning is fully allowed as long as you have a permit. As a matter of fact, coming up here in May 15th, we're going to start issuing burn permits again. So if you are going to burn, make sure you get a burn permit to do that correctly and follow the rules associated with the burn permit.
I don't have a permit system, sorry, it's
May
May 10th.
10th, thank you. May 10th. Thanks for the correction. Through October 20th.
Correct.
Unless the fire season runs long and that could go longer than that. Anyhow, so yeah, make sure you get your burn permit. But yeah, burning is fully acceptable. Just make sure you do it right and do it safe. If you have questions about burning, you want me to come out and look at your burn piles and make sure they're safe, I'm always happy to do that for you. Make a recommendation of things that you can do. Even with me, I've been in this world for a long time fighting fire and assessing fires. I burn small piles. I build up a big pile and I feed it all day long. That way it's out and done by the time I go to bed that night. That's just how I do it. I find it a lot safer. I know a lot of firefighters who thought they needed a big slash pile, went inside the house and slash piles it out. So even we make mistakes at times, like May 15th instead of May 10th.
But to add to that, just if anybody did do any like type of logging operation, I just posted this 2 days ago. We are seeing slash piles that were started in the fall, standing back up with the wind conditions and the low humidity. So if you did burn big piles, just to get the word out, go check your piles.
Yeah, and actually, I think there's a pretty good chance our Ridge Creek fire is probably going to start smoking here within the next couple
Tyson
of weeks.
is down up in St. Mary's is standing piles back up from that fire. So, and we had a bunch of around Sandpoint. So just
Scary.
those larger industrial, large landowner logging operations, check those piles.
Any other questions before I hand it off to some of these others?
No, I wanted to say something though. You said that the ash and stuff can fly 5 miles. Well, during the Ridge Creek fire, I had ash on my car in the mornings, and I had big pieces of ash and burnt pieces that were on my beach, in my yard, and I'm on Hayden Haven. So, and
And the
that
wind
was,
was blowing the opposite direction.
yeah. So, they said to watch for sparks and stuff, but who knows when that flew in during the night. But, it was very scary. So, and it was so dry down there that I had my sprinklers going and everything else I could possibly have going all the time just because of that.
So I know your question back here in the back
Can you
corner.
speak briefly about the risk of fireworks?
For what?
Fireworks.
Fireworks. So anything that leaves the ground or a 10-foot diameter circle is considered illegal. Anything that goes boom is considered illegal.
Yeah, but how come it's not, even though it's illegal,
It's not enforced.
people still do it? And
Here's the problem. I'm going to be totally honest
Scary.
with you. Remember how I said how many fires we have and how those fires have increased and how many personnel we have? It's the same thing with the sheriff's department. They don't have enough people, especially in and around the 4th of July, because there's a whole lot of here, hold my beer kind of things going on. They do not have time. I wish they did. They do not have time to go after all the illegal firework calls. As a matter of fact, to the point where in most cases, because how do you, I'm not a deputy, but if I was to go up and I'm writing somebody a ticket for an illegal firework while everybody around me is shooting off illegal fireworks, that's a full-time job just going after each one of those persons. By law, they have to physically see that individual light that firework to be able to prosecute. So 9 times out of 10, it's a noise complaint and they move on with their lives. Because those people are going to go to court and go, wait a minute, you wrote me a ticket when my neighbor was doing illegal fireworks. Or the person across the street was doing illegal fireworks.
The people coming to visit don't know that.
They don't know that.
They don't know
And
that.
you can go down to the tribe and you can pick up fireworks that are considered illegal fireworks, but there's no regulatory action on them because they're sold on tribal ground. So education is the key in there. If I find out that an illegal firework caused a fire, I'm going to go after you for full prosecution or restitution on it. That's my goal. I'm also an arson investigator. So use of an illegal firework that starts a fire is, guess what? Arson. And I'm going to press charges and make sure that you pay that full restitution associated with that. But I got to catch you. I got to know who did it. A couple years ago out here at the lake, I'm not going to say which point it was on, but some individuals caught a tree on fire. Are you familiar with it? Were you there?
Right across the
Yeah.
road. Saw it at night.
And it was one of those situations where it was a Roman candle, and it was a, here, hold my beer while I light this, and next thing you know, the tree's on fire. And then somebody's grabbing the chainsaw to try to cut the tree down, which would have fallen on top of the boats or on the dock. Whole series of unfortunate events would have occurred. They would have learned a great lesson. I kind of wanted to stand there for a minute and just watch what was going to happen, but I didn't. But yeah, it happens. And unfortunately, they're illegal, but so is speeding. And the cops aren't going to bust everybody for speeding. They don't have the time. I mean, we talk to the sheriff every single year about it. We talk to the governor's office about it. And it's so hard to regulate. As a matter of fact, in my world, I wish they would either make them all illegal or all legal. And if they're all legal, we're going to press the maximum to the extent of the law if you start a fire range or something with those fireworks. But it happens every single year.
Our next speaker is Steve Bladel.
So I have a bit of fire background. But my role with the Fire Smart program is to work with the county. They've hired me to help get this work done on the ground. So you've been exposed to a lot of the whole process. We have a whole team of people, you folks, HOAs, all these entities are really valuable in bringing to attention where we need to do this work. So I don't go out and identify specific areas. I work with the team to do it. And we try to track those areas. So if there's interest, like the Sunset Shores, when we have a good project like that, and if we have some grant money, I definitely like to meet with those people, look at it on the ground, work with Tyler to help make sure to see if that's a priority so that we can know where we can best spend the money and get the most bang for the buck. So it's a process that we have to go through. Typically, if everything's going right, I don't have a lot of involvement with it, and I'm meeting with the person that's been selected for the field break, and I'm talking to them about their property. I'm going out with them and looking at what they might want to preserve, whether it's a special where they buried their pets, or where they need a privacy screen, and what type of vegetation they want to remove, and make sure we can still be an effective field break and still preserve some of the things you value about your property. So, and then if we pass that test and we can still get a meaningful field break in, I'll lay the field break out, and I'll work with the individual landowner to develop what we call a defensible space plan, which is a description and specific treatment recommendation for your property. And since we're looking for larger landscape level field breaks, there's generally a number of different owners in these field breaks. So we'll get an agreement and a separate prescription for each one of those folks, and then we'll batch it up into one project, and then we bid it out to the contractors. And we have quite a list of experienced contractors that will take a look at it and give us a bid. And we generally take the lowest bid, but that doesn't mean we're just getting poor quality work. Every one of those contractors has to live up to the prescription that we've done. So I guess the main point I want to emphasize is that not every acre needs to be treated as a field break. There's other types of ways that you can keep your forest healthy and resilient from wildfire, and pre-commercial thinning, maybe some commercial harvesting, tree planting, all sorts of forest management things. And there is other sources of funding for this through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and I think Andrew will be talking more about that. So there are other sources to get this work done. But if it's a specific area for a field break, that's where Fire Smart's going to step in. And the whole process can take a little while. We did get a sizable grant for this area, but it was a fairly general area. And so we did some field break work on the east side of the lake here in this community, but we also did some work on the west side over by English Point, and we also did some work on the south end by the Grandview neighborhood on the south side with this grant. So the grant that we had, the work we did on this side was for Henry Point. If anybody is familiar with that, it's a private drive and a private property where there's a lot of lake homes, and we could treat a large, at least 200 or 300 feet we would like to have for a field break ideally. We were able to do that. We were able to tie that work into some landscape, a ridge that was a landscape level field break. So that was a really good example of what types of projects that we're looking for. And similarly, we did the same thing over on Wildflower Lane, east of English Point, and then Granby was the same kind of thing. We linked a bunch of properties together. So that's a good example of what we're looking for. Also, if lots of individual people want to get together and create a field break, or if there's been a lot of work done in the neighborhood and we can just treat one property to link it in, we really want to know about areas like that. And then what we'll do, if we don't have a grant for an area, is we track those in a spreadsheet and it just pops up on a map, and then we can see where we have this interest. And when the county is sorting out where to write a grant for an area, that's going to be one of the biggest drivers, is where we have interest and where we can go with that grant money. So being aware of what's there, bringing it to our attention, even though it doesn't guarantee any work's going to be done, it really helps us put these field breaks together and get work done on a landscape level. So for instance, if there's some really meaningful field breaks in this neighborhood that we can't get to with the little bit of money that we have left in this grant, we'll look at other grant sources and maybe even the county might look at writing a grant in the future for the area. So it can take a while, up to a year or more sometimes, and it's hard to tell what exactly we can and can't do for folks. So that's where the NRCS can step in, and they can help with field breaks. It can help with pre-commercial thinning and some other forest health issues too, if you're interested in not going through the process.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Larson. I'm a private forestry specialist with Idaho Department of Lands. So that means I spend half my job as an FPA forester. That's going out inspecting logging jobs, making sure loggers are following all of our rules. And then the other half is the private forestry assistance. That's what brings me here today. So first I want to correct myself earlier about deciduous trees. All trees have leaves. Deciduous trees, generally speaking, lose their leaves. Those are the broad leaves that you see. Just wanted to clarify that. So as we were sitting over there, Jen reminded me, we live in an area that was dominated by a natural fire regime. Since we all want to live here, we've kind of put the kibosh on that, right? So now we have an area that was so used to burning. That's how this, landscape was developed. That's why we have certain trees here. And now that we live here, we've cut that out for good reason. So now, we are tasked with taking care of those hazardous fuels. So that's where I kind of step in, helping keep your trees green. So providing technical assistance is kind of the main way that we do that. So for landowners, what that looks like is you give me a call, you can come do a walkthrough on your property. We'll look at stand health, insect and disease issues, species selections, if you have an area that you need to plant. Some areas, you can get away with planting, more shade tolerant species, maybe western red cedar can go in over here, but on a pine site, you wouldn't want to plant that. So things like that. Thinning recommendations, pruning, basically anything having to do with that 100-foot zone and out. That's where really, as foresters, that's where we have most of our expertise. So that's the area that I like to focus on. Keeping trees green, because green trees are harder to burn. As Steve pointed out, you don't have to treat every acre as a fuel break or every square foot on your property. So having areas that are more dense, that can be okay, right? It's good for other things, wildlife, that sort of thing. So I can help kind of prioritize your workload too when you're looking at your property. The other day I was out with the landowner. He's done great work on his property, except for there was a dry draw right below the house. So, if fire was coming through there, right, fire tends to go uphill, especially during the day, uphill with the winds, kind of acts as a natural funnel. And this is an area that was, chock full of vegetation, pretty much right below the house. So we're looking at it going, hey, if there was a fire down below, it's going to run up this little dry draw and be right in your back. So, looking at things like that on your property, kind of saying this is your number one area that I would work on first. Steve mentioned the NRCS and potential funding opportunities. They have a program called EQIP, and it's a cost sharing program, so it's designed to cover 50 to 70% of the cost to get work done on the ground. So you as a landowner, typically need to put in 30 to 50% of the cost. The first step with that is either calling the NRCS or calling the Department of Lands and requesting that site visit. We'll come out, see if the NRCS EQIP project would be a good way to go, or if we're going to refer you over to the county and maybe work with Steve instead. The EQIP program, it does require a forest management plan to be written, or kind of a neck down version of that, a forest narrative, depending on the scope of the project. So that's kind of a first step before you qualify for the program. And that is a competitive program. So, the NRCS, they get tons of applications, they have a fine pot of money, and they have to look at everybody's projects, rank them all, say, yep, this is where the best money, the money's going to do the best good on the ground. So, working with the forester, making sure that your project is actually meeting, a resource concern is important. All right, so that's NRCS. Some things that we don't do as state foresters, we don't do inventory cruises. So if you think you have commercial volume on your property, I can kind of come out, I can point that out during the walkthrough and technical assist, but we can't do a full-blown inventory cruise for you. You'd have to contract a consulting forester for that. I'm not going to fire up a chainsaw and do the work myself. I just create honey-do lists. You guys actually have to get work. Definitely don't want my tax advice, so don't ask about taxes. And we don't administer contracts. If you do decide to hire somebody to do mastication work on your property, I can help you come up with the specifications for that, and then you can submit a contract. But I can be out on the ground after and then there was a question earlier about what to do with all these pine needles on the ground. I was talking to Jen, and I did this on my property earlier this spring. I did a little underburning, so actually going around and dropping some fire on the ground and letting that, natural fire kind of do its thing and burn off that layer of needles. And it worked out pretty well. I had to grab my plastic and dig in some lime real quick, but it's expected. So just pick a good day, good time of year, where there's good weather.
I would also hazard or put little parentheses around this. He did this himself. He chose to do this. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's where you hire a forester to come out and do this. You hire next-gen logging. There are people who will conduct understory burn. I would not, as the person that manages burn permits, tell everybody to run their own broadcast burning on their property if you don't have the skill set or the experience or the tools to safely and effectively get there. We don't want you to start a wildfire to prevent a wildfire. We don't want to use good fire to end up being bad fire. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do it during the right time of year, it's very effective.
Oh yeah, there is good fire. I will talk about that next. Good fire. There's good fire. Fire is a great tool to achieving what you're going to want to do in home hardening situations, but it's not always the best tool.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. Jennifer Russell, IDO.
Hi. I did not mean to jump in there, but I'm Jen Russell, and I'm the fire prevention officer for the state fire department. So there's me, just me.
Yeah.
I'm the only one. So I know a lot of places and get to talk to a lot of folks about this kind of stuff. So preventing wildfire is important. You can't prevent lightning. So we got fire on the ground here in Idaho because we are a fire adapted community. Like Andrew alluded to, fire was here way before any of us were. The trees and the critters all lived with fire. Fire came, fire went. We didn't have this big buildup of fuel because the forest evolved with understanding how fire worked in their community. Well, guess which state is the fastest growing state in the union? Yeah. If you guess Idaho, you got it right, ding, ding, ding. We had so many people move to the state, so they learned fire in wherever state they came from, but it's not Idaho fire. So my job is to try to educate folks about how fire burns in Idaho, what they can do to harden their home, what they can do to their landscape, so how we can live together and build our resilience to fire. Because wildfire is going to be here. there's not any chance of us getting away from it. We didn't come to a state that's got cement walls around the outside of it, and we're never gonna have a wildfire. We live with fire, and how can we add to our resilience? So just like those pea pines and the little critters, how we can live with fire, and fire is like, okay, it's a tool that we understand and work with in our ecosystem. So I want to point everybody out to this document. I brought some that if you don't have one, it's talking about your home ignition zone. And this is where Tyler was really starting to focus, where we start at your house, like standing on your roof, and we go 5 feet out, which is as tall as me, away from your foundation. And that's where you focus on first. And we want to harden that home to all those little bitty embers, because your ember is the biggest threat to that piece of your property, your home, 5 feet out. A little ember is gonna fly 5 miles over and land. If it doesn't have anything to eat, it gonna die. So what's it gonna eat? It's gonna eat like what he talked about, anything wood, anything flammable. So how do we take down that flammability? If it doesn't have anything to eat, it can't live. So that's what we're talking about, home hardening in the home ignition zone. And that can seem really daunting, because that was a lot of information. Tyler had a ton of cool information, and so did Steve, and so did, I'm gonna now do Andrew. I talk really fast, I'm sure. But it's overwhelming to think about it, and you don't want to have paralysis in this whole analysis of where do I start? So what's cool about this document is these 7 things to help you start are in no particular order. You can start with one thing, and that's going to make the biggest difference. You just have to start. And I like to tell folks that place around your property where all the leaves collect, because that's where the wind pushes them. That's also where the little ember's going to get pushed. And there's a whole bunch of leaves in those little crotches, and that tiniest little bitty ember just hangs out there and bakes and cooks and cooks and cooks, and it just grows and grows and grows and gets stronger. It will light up underneath your fascia, and then it starts your house on fire. And once your house is on fire, it's going to be a tough place to put it out. So we don't want your house to start on fire in the first place. The whole goal of this is to harden that home so it is resilient. It can survive fire around your house on the trees. That 30 feet out, that can go. But your house itself is protected and safe. We're never saying that anything is going to be possible. We're not bubble wrapping everything and calling it good forever. But we do think that with added diligence to things like around your home and increasing that hardness, you will have the higher percentage of surviving that. Ever seen the pictures of the Methow Valley that burned? And there's this one house, and it's got green grass all around it, and it is perfect, and then everything else is dead. And we use it in prevention and hazard fuel risk mitigation work all the time to stand it up and show it. It's like, these folks did the work, and this is what happened, and nobody else around it did it. It is, you can see the forest, and it was a forest, it wasn't like, oh, community, but they did the work around their property, and the forest burnt to the edge of that property line and stopped. Because we like to talk about fire triangles a lot in fire behavior, but we all are a fire triangle as well. We start with prevention. I stop unwanted human-caused fires. So anything that we don't want to put fire on the ground as a tool, that's what we want to stop. I want to stop driving chains and sparks and things like that, and people throw cigarettes out the car window, and people parking on dry grass. But the mitigation part, we work with those folks to change fire behavior. If I take that fuel break and if I've got a fast-moving fire out across grass and I have mowed a nice, big, healthy swath of dirt, what do you think that fire does? It's got nowhere to go. It stops. Same thing around your house. I want you to be able to change that fire behavior so that when we go to suppression, those suppression guys are both working in a safe environment and they have a better chance of success. That's the biggest thing. Is so when we all work together, we don't start fires being dumb. We have a fuel break, and we work with how to home harden. And then we accidentally get a fire because it's lightning. That all of us work to have a higher chance of success all the way around. We're both resilient and we're successful. And inside this handy flyer, there's also the zones, if you didn't remember those. So starting at your house, that's why it's in red. And we're gonna focus there first and then work our ways out. And so that's kind of it for me. I think
Thank you.
There's still one more to go, and we don't want to keep you.
The grant
everybody's
lady.
butts getting tired, so. I will make this real brief to say that my name is Andrea. I work for the Cook County Office of Emergency Management. I facilitate all grants and find grants. I work specifically with Idaho Department of Lands and Fire. And I also work with the Shared Stewardship Program, which is half federal funding and half state funding. So grants, unfortunately, take a long time. It's not a fast process by any stretch of the imagination. It usually, when we put in an application, we'll put in an application in March. We won't hear anything until March or April of the following year, whether or not our funding is going to be granted. So then the second portion of that is finding projects. So if there's a project in Hayden, and then we have to find the community who wants us to be able to come onto their property and do this work that everybody is talking about. So if you want to eliminate a whole year's worth of work, because that's how long it usually takes to put together a project, I have a form out on the table. All you need to do is put down your name, your address, your phone number, and how many acres you have. And so then we have a cross-boundaries meeting that we come together once a month, and we're putting together little projects. So when money comes available, we can be like, oh, there's $55,000. I got a phone call. I have $55,000. How can you spend it? Oh, well, we have already sat down and we already have all these little projects. Like, this would be perfect for that area. So we call it Easter egg money, kind of. But it just like, we just happened to get, that's how we were able to fund the Farragut Trail Park project. We did that within 4 months. We got the money, the work is being done right now. Same with Post Falls Community Forest. We got the money, hey, we have $120,000. Where can you put it? Okay, well, Post Falls Community Forest, from that fire, we can start working on that. That project's almost done. So, although grants take a long time, we do get random money that says, here's how much money do you have a project. So, the more people that know about the Fire Smart program and that want to be involved, they can call the office, they can call Steve. Somebody will come out, take a look at your property, figure out whether or not it would fit in a project, and then we have these projects, we have these groups that will look on a map and say, this many people are interested in having a project done on their property. So that's kind of how the grants work. The other thing is, Tyler mentioned, so just so you know, Cook County Office of Emergency Management, when we did the Ridge Creek Fire and the Parkway Fire, those evacuations come through the Cook County Office of Emergency Management. So during fire season, if you are on our Facebook page or we have a website, as soon as an evacuation happens, it's posted with a map on either our Facebook page or on the website that shows exactly where the evacuation zones are. So it's just a little tidbit of information. There's usually, we hold a citizen inquiry line, so if people have questions, that number is on the map. They call us, we can tell you, yes, you're in the evacuation zone, no, you're not in the evacuation zone, or you need to be ready to go. So just to also kind of put that out there that during those times, you can find a lot of information on the Cook County Office of Emergency Management website or Facebook page.